Monomyths are the engine of religions. However, it is protected because it is so difficult to see. It's hard to understand and comprehend how a monomyth works. However, a monomyth isn't all there is to it. In this video, I'm going to make a comparison showing how in antiquity there was one style that morphed. And we can see that morphing taking place by having two examples, one of them from the Babylonian creation myth, the 7 tablets of creation, and the second from Genesis, from the 7 days of creation, all the way just up to chapter 11, that those two right there are one particular old style. But as we step up into Abram and Sarai, and as we step up into Moses in Exodus, we're going to see a different style morphing right there. I want to talk about that in this video. My name is Dan Paulson. This is complex and deep into monomyth. First, what's a monomyth? You have to have an understanding of what that is first. It is a pattern that a story is made upon. The term monomyth is not a good one. Is there a monomyth? I would have to say no, there's not a monomyth. What there is a template that stories are built upon. If you were to say mono, myth, one mythology, you look at all the stories from antiquity and you don't see one story. We see bunches of different stories. So how can there be one myth, monomyth? What there is a template that they're sharing. It's a mono template. The myth is going to sound different because it's captured in cryptic verbiage, and it's something we need to process. We are very far removed from what they were doing. Now, the term monomyth popularly came into our vocabulary about the time of Joseph Campbell writing his book, The Hero of a Thousand Faces. He's the one that actually identified the monomyth. And what he did is he read so many stories that he began to realize there's a pattern in them. There's a person that's called. They don't want to go. They have to get supernatural aid. Then they've got to cross a river, some kind of a threshold or a sea or something like that. They have to go defeat an enemy. There's other things that happen along the way, but he began to identify that. And this is basically the pattern that he came up with. Remember, this is global. He's reading myths and religions from around the world from antiquity. Nothing is off limits. He's not religious. He's looking and studying mythology. What does he find? This right here. What we see is the 17 stages of Joseph Campbell's monomyth. And right here at the top, if we take a look, as we start moving in a counterclockwise direction around this, it's a pattern. It's a cycle that we're going to take. At first, there's a separation. You see that in this whole first section. Then there is an initiation down below, and then a return. Now, this would be how the story is written if you're trying to write the story. The first Star Wars trilogy was made using this template right here. It's not complete, but let's just take a look and see what it is right now. First, there's a call to adventure. There's going to be somebody somehow that is isolated to call, a person pulled out of the backwoods, or an unlikely person coming along, or maybe a chosen person somehow, somebody that's isolated out of the crowd. They're not going to want to go. It's going to be like, I'm not the right person. Then they're going to move along and get supernatural aid. What did we see here? Luke was if we went back to the Star Wars one, Luke is the son of Vader. His uncle tells him he can't go. He wants to go. Luke himself does. He doesn't refuse the call, but the refusal of the call element comes in that he can't go when his uncle says, no, you can't go. You have to stay here and help with the fall harvest. Those conditions change and he's allowed to go. Then next is supernatural aid. What is that? Training with the Force with Yoda at Dagobah. And then it moves on. But getting away from that, that's the pattern that he's seeing. Crossing a first threshold, now you've got a river or something like that. Belly of the whale, you're inside of something. Road of trials, there's a bunch of issues that you have to have, or that are part of the story. There's a meeting with a goddess. Somehow the story holds a meeting up with somebody inside, a female. But there's temptations and atonement with the Father. There's a ultimate gain of your goal, apotheosis. They've got apostasis here. I think it's apotheosis is what that's supposed to be. The ultimate boon, you've gained what you're looking for. Whatever the adventure was. In this case, Luke defeated the Death Star. Refusal of the return, I don't know if that happens. That's common in stories where people don't want to come back to the real world. They want to stay in there. It's a magical flight return, rescue from without. Somebody from outside comes and gets them. No, come back to the world. Master of two worlds. Once you come back, you can now travel back and forth between the two worlds. You have experience. And you know what? That master of two worlds I only find in one place. I'm sure it's elsewhere. I have not read as much as Joseph Campbell had. I really focus in on the details of each individual story as opposed to a kind of a broader look. So the place I find it is in a story that is from Greek, and it is the voyage of the Argo. Jason and the Argonauts sail through the clashing rocks. There's actually, if you're advanced in this, you're going to see there's two thresholds to cross. Number one, he crosses the river and loses a sandal when he meets up Pelias. That's the first threshold. Pelias is the earlier self. That denotes the idea that we have turned inward and are now facing our earlier self going, I'm coming after you. And Pelias is the one going, I'm not giving it up. I don't want you to have the land. Okay, so this is a story signifying we've turned in and facing ourselves. However, the worst is yet to come. We still have, we can face ourselves, but now what's in there? We got deep memories. We got another place to cross through. That's where the clashing rocks go through. That's where the real adventure has to happen. Now, once that happens, once you've turned inward and said, I'm going to heal these issues and begin to work on them, it's something once you've done it, you go, okay, I see what to do. I can go back and forth all the time now and do this. So this whole story signifies the idea that this is a difficult place to get to. But once you've done it, you can get through there all the time now. You've learned what to do. And then there's freedom to live. You live life free of whatever there was. That is the template of the monomyth right there. That's it right there. That is, but you would look at that and go, I don't see that in any of these stories. I don't get what you're talking about. Okay, I want to tell you it's incomplete, and there's big chunks of what Joseph Campbell didn't see. The monomyth is this right here, except it's in higher detail. He left out things like we're going to see cyclical pain. There's going to be a struggle to leave the past, but the reason you leave is because of cyclical pain. He doesn't have that written in here. He didn't identify that one. But here's what is most important right now. What the monomyth is if at any point in time somebody in their own consciousness decides I have become a product of my judgments and my memories. I didn't know any different. I want to turn inward and look at life differently and free myself from my beginnings. I want to rise above and be somebody that's living free of these memories, the pain, the emotion, the shame, the hurt, all of the things inside. It's an inward path. That the monomyth right there is what that is. It's the person saying, I'm going to turn inward. I don't want to do it. The reason I'm doing it is because I've got cyclical pain. This keeps happening. I can't get out of this, whatever it is in life. I've got to get away from it. I've got to move away from it. It's going to be difficult. I need supernatural aid. That means not supernatural aid. What that means, it's an analogous term. Joseph Campbell left the terms nebulous. The called person is the one that says, I've had it. Refusal of the call is, boy, I don't want to go. It's hard. Habits are hard to break. Relationships are hard to leave. Stepping off and starting off something new from scratch is very difficult. So this is going to be a hard process. The supernatural aid then is knowing what to do. It's knowing that what you're going after is that you are perceiving something from the past that continually haunts you. It's a seed planted in your garden, and you're living through cause and effect through this. You're going to have to go back and address this. That's the creature. That's the monster. That's what you want to connect up with and defeat. But you defeat it by mentally manipulating it in such a way that you lose your connection with the victim status so that you're no longer attached to it in the emotional state. It is that emotional state that is the seed that keeps things happening. So if we want to get out of the funk of the cycle of pain, then what we have to do is go back and change the way we're perceiving something that we're holding an emotional judgment to that is the real cause of the cycling happening over and over again. We may not like it, but you want to change your life, that's what you have to do. That's how you get a better life from God who sees in secret if you forgive the odd against your brother. It's removing the mote from your eye. All of these are going to be analogous terms letting us know that we need to get rid of these judgments right here. What's really important to understand here then is the way that a monomyth works is it's made on the stages of how you must, you're going to be hurt. You're going to have a hard time leaving the past. You're going to have to know what to do. You're going to have to turn inward. You're going to have to start facing these demons and healing them. But you're going to have to reconnect with the higher awareness. He doesn't have that identified. Right here where the crossing of the threshold is, you need God to show up at that same time. He does not have that. Or at the calling. Right at the calling before the threshold is crossed, or at the crossing of the threshold, somewhere in that section right there, God has to show up. He does not have that. In every story you're going to see when the calling happens, God reemerges at that time. What we don't necessarily know is that there's a template prior to this one. I'm not going to keep using Joseph Campbell's because of problems in there. The cyclical pain isn't there. The connection with God, the meeting up with the Father, that's something that I believe that's what should happen at the crossing of the threshold. It's written into Star Wars as meeting up with Vader much later on. But this real connection to the higher awareness happens. Yeah, it's somewhere different. Okay, so I'm not going to continue to use Joseph Campbell's template, is what I mean there. What I'm going to do is update that, and I'm going to make it plain language. The calling is the person that decides to turn inward. The refusal of the call is, man, this is hard. I don't want to face these things. It's shameful. Really? I was raped. I was molested. I raped. I molested. I've done somehow something. I have something in me that is so hurtful. I don't want to deal with it. I'm afraid of it. Okay, we get that way. That's going to be part of the struggle. It's understanding what to do and realizing that, you know what, that's what your life is going to continually be a part of. That's what grows in your garden. Those are the thistles from your garden that are going to continue to emerge unless they're managed in some way. And those are all analogous terms. The garden of the mind, the thoughts, what is there, what emerges that is continually hurtful. What would that sound like in plain language? This gets stark. The thistles emerge from your garden every season. Your issues get triggered every time someone's around that pisses you off. What keeps you from having a quiet mind when you're in a quiet place? All of these things that we're bringing with us and our connection to the higher awareness, all of that has to happen. But here's what I want to point out at this point. That monomyth right there is the turning inward. It does not cover where I came from and how I got there to begin with. So there's an entire life cycle that Joseph Campbell doesn't have identified that exists in some stories, but not all stories. If you go to Ezekiel, stories like that, Joshua, you're going to find that that's just a monomyth. It's a calling. God shows up. The person shows up. There's nothing about the childhood of that person. You don't know where they come from. They're offspring from somebody. Boom, they show up as an adult ready to go. That's the monomyth. Now, when you go to stories like Moses, you're going to see the calling happens when and we'll get there, when he's on Mount Horeb, when God shows up. But his entire life is identified, the basket, the lifespan, all of that, up to the time of the calling. So his life is actually identified there. When we get to Genesis, we're going to see God calls Abraham. At first he calls Abram, but later he disappears after calling Abram, and then reemerges when it's time to change his name from Abram to Abraham. That's when the calling happens right there. So there's a pattern happening, and what we're going to begin to understand that these are iterations of us. This is our lifestyle. I'm a certain person. I've got a certain brain type. I'm going to work a function a certain way. I'm going to have this life experience. I'm going to become a product of all of these things. At some point, I'm going to be called, and I'm not going to want to go. So that entire first life cycle is not there all the time, but we're going to find it in Exodus. We're going to find it in Genesis. We're going to find it in actually Genesis 12 on, but we're not going to find it Genesis 1 through 8. When we see the calling of Noah is not a later iteration of self. We had Adam and Eve, and then Noah comes about later. So the calling is not following a pattern that looks like it's continual iterations of me. And when we get to the Babylonian creation myth, the Enuma Elish, we see the same thing. That Marduk is a product later on. Marduk is not an iteration of Tiamat. Tiamat needs to be destroyed, the bad force, all of that. So there's something, and like the world needs to be destroyed, or the destructive force needs to be destroyed. And in those two cases, those are much older, so they're not showing the final iteration of style that shows how it's iterations of us. It's a lifestyle of us. We become that person when we follow the story, when we understand that that's how the monomyth works. I am that person. And we got to be careful here. If I am saying that I'm Moses, that does not mean I am Moses before God. That means that I'm looking at a monomyth going, oh, I'm this Moses character. I'm walking this path. I'm saved in a basket at birth. I'm a rare person. I'm going to have these experiences where plagues come all the time, cyclical. Oh, there's my cyclical pain. I'm going to have a struggle to leave the past. Pharaoh says, you can go, and then God hardens his heart. No, you can't. Yes, you can. No, you can't. God's telling Pharaoh to let him go, and then God is stepping in and hardening his heart. Hello, something's going on here. Okay, so we see these elements coming into play. I am becoming divided. Pharaoh represents an aspect of my early self that I need to leave behind, and it's a struggle to leave that past. Then I cross the Red Sea, crossing of the threshold, and then go spend, belly of the whale, 40 years in the desert. These are analogous terms, and that's what we have to talk about. Analogous terms, metaphoric terms, how they are creating the concepts in these stories. That's how we have to read them. There's concepts nested in the mysterious sounding stories, but they all can be analyzed and they have a place. Understanding that whoever wrote this, the teacher, made it on how a life works. And if we're understanding the story is that way, then we're interpreting it that way, then we should be able to get to the bottom line. Okay. The first thing I need to do is say that they are doing 100% analogous terms. Everything that they're doing needs to be shifted. Every word. If it sounds like, I should need to interpret that one. That one's too weird. These ones all sound okay. You know what? You can't do that. And somebody else is going to make a different decision. If you interpret something one way, then interpret everything exactly the same way. That's the only way this is going to work. Stick with me. That's why it becomes so difficult, because it's very old and it takes a long time to learn how to do this. Okay. So analogous terminology is what? That means that we're telling a story about something, but we're not using the right terms. Let's say that I want to teach something. Something happened to me one time. I had an issue with somebody. We had a fight and an argument, and to this day that pisses me off. God, I hate that person. And every time I see him, or every time something happens over here, I get riled up about it, and it happens over and over again. That I'm what's happened is a seed got planted, and then I'm having cyclical pain as a result of that. But if you look at life, you have to understand that's what's happening. And then I'm teaching people the reason that you're having a difficult time is because of what you're hanging on to. So I'm going to start passing around a lesson that I can't tell people, honestly, tell people that in plain language and spread it around. You have to forgive the people that have done things to you. They're not going to, up yours, they're not going to spread that around. You have to hide it in verbiage that they will carry, and that might even impact them. All right, well, in this case, we're just making up our own. So what I'm going to look around and look at my environment, and I'm going to find things out there that are analogous to what I have going on. I'm going to put myself into a position. I know already that mentally, if I'm hanging on to something, I can't get free of it. It just I cycle around it over and over again. Then as I'm walking around, I see an anchored ship out there, and I see that ship can't sail free as long as it's anchored. And I go, oh, you know what? If I pretend like that an anchored ship cannot sail, the person that doesn't release things cannot sail free. I'm suddenly creating analogous verbiage that's nesting the lesson. And the person that's receiving it would listen and go, yeah, an anchored ship isn't going to sail. But a person that understands it is going to go, oh, I'm the ship, and what I'm anchored to I can't get free of. You can then continue to change that and make it sound different. I see a dog tied up out this old man's house, so the dog won't run away. It's a wild dog, that takes off all the time. Anyway, so the dog that's tied in the yard cannot escape. The anchored ship cannot sail. I see a goat chained up in a field someplace. The goat chained up cannot escape. I'm suddenly seeing things in my environment. A bat's in my belfry. Yeah, there's things I have to resolve. That's all analogous verbiage. We do that all the time. That's exactly what they're doing. They're using all analogous verbiage like that, completely. All right, let's put our concept comprehension to the test. Jesus is a common monomyth hero. Watch for conceptual patterns. These are all written on one shared template. Okay, these are some common things that are easy to pick out between a couple of different stories. Jesus is called as the Son of God, has supernatural powers, travels with hand-picked disciples, and seeks the kingdom of heaven within. Jason is called as the rightful ruler, has Hera for supernatural powers, travels with the Argonauts, and seeks the golden fleece. That's Greek myth, not religious. King Arthur is called as the only one who could extract Excalibur, has Merlin for supernatural powers, travels with hand-picked knights, and seeks the Holy Grail. And again, George Lucas used Campbell's template for the first Star Wars trilogy. Luke is called as the son of Vader, has the force for supernatural powers, travels with special selected rebels, and seeks to save the Alliance. He's also kind of looked over by Obi-Wan too, isn't he? Notice they all feature a doubter or a problem in the midst of travelers. Judas, Lancelot, C-3PO, Acostus, who's the son of Pelias, the spy on the trip. These all represent aspects of us, who they're traveling with. But before getting on to that, let's do something here. There we go. This is what we're looking at between them. They're called, each one of them is called. They're isolated out. They each have supernatural powers. They travel with hand-picked disciples, argonauts, hand-picked knights, hand-selected rebels, or special selected rebels. There's a group that you're traveling with, and there is a goal that you have. The kingdom of heaven within, the golden fleece, Holy Grail, save the Alliance. So those are patterns that we're looking for in the background, that are evident, that is showing us a monomyth, that is showing us something sequential is going on in the background. We see that in the pattern in the stories, if we read enough of them. Here, let's take a look at one of them, Ezekiel. I'm going to read through a couple things and just point them out. We're right here in the beginning. Now it came in the 30th year, in the 4th month, and the 5th day of the month, as I was among the captives by the river of Chebar, that the heavens were open, and I saw visions of God. What do we have right here? God is showing up. In the 5th day of the month, which was the 5th year of King Jehoiakim's captivity, the word of the Lord came expressly to the priest of the son of Buzi in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Chebar, and the hand of the Lord was upon him. Special selected person standing at a threshold by a river, Chebar, and God shows up and comes expressly to him. See that pattern? There's going to be some supernatural aid down here somewhere. Here's where God is talking to him, and he said to me, Son of man, this is the higher awareness. This is something we're supposed to know. Let's see. And I looked, behold, a hand was sent unto me, and lo, a roll of a book was therein. The roll of a book was therein, scroll. And he spread it before me, and it was written within and without, and there was written therein lamentations and mourning and woe. Moreover, he said to me, Son of man, eat this roll, and go speak to the house of Israel. So I opened my mouth, and he caused me to eat that roll. And he said to me, Son of man, cause your belly to eat, and fill the bowels with this roll that I give you. And I did eat, and it was in my mouth as honey for sweetness. All right, he just got the supernatural aid right there, but it's a weird thing, isn't it? Eating a book that tastes sweet. This is a spiritual thing. You're learning something. You're learning what to do. I know what I have to do, and I'm taking this knowledge, and I'm going to turn inward and go defeat the sinning house of Israel, the bad house of Israel right now, and get them back online. Okay, we have us a monomyth. You'll notice that in this style right here, this is where the person just shows up. The son of Buzi right there, he's already full-grown adult, ready to go. All right, this time going into Joshua. Let's see what we have here. As we start reading, it's going to start right in. And now after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spoke to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying. So right here, the Lord just showed up to Joshua. Moses, my servant, is dead. So arise, go over this Jordan. There's the river. There's a river crossing. And all this people in the land which I do give them, even to the children of Israel. Every place the sole of your foot shall tread, and I have given unto you, as I said to Moses. From the wilderness it goes on, right? We're going to get down here to the supernatural aid. This book of the law shall not depart out of your mouth, but you shall meditate therein day and night, that you may observe to do all according to do that is written within. For then you shall make your way prosperous, and you shall have good success. So here we have the book of the law shall not depart out of your mouth. It's a similar sound. It's not quite eat it, but we've got it. You will have good success, sweet honey, good stuff. All right, are we seeing a common motif there? Those are not true. They represent something in the story. They're the part of the story that says supernatural aid. Here is what you're going to do. You're taking this with you. This is the answer that you need. You know what to do. Look at your life. The book of life is really what you must do, the truth of it all. That's what that is. You can't let it depart. And we do. We don't live that way. The stuff seems kind of thick. Okay, now, in both of those two story types, what we see is that there is no life of that person. They suddenly show up and they're at a threshold. They're given some supernatural aid or something like that. All right, let's venture into Exodus. And I'm going to use the NRSV and just talk about some high points here. I'm not too worried about details. It starts off here. We've got, their sons of Israel talked about here. The Israelites are oppressed. Time goes on. Birth and youth of Moses. So we got Moses beginning in chapter 2 of the story. Now the man from the house of Levi went and married a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son. So we've got Moses starting here as an infant, being born at birth. He's put in the basket. He's raised somewhere else. Later on, he flees to Midian. He's growing up. There's forced labor going on. He flees from Pharaoh. There's a number of things that go on. For the most part, it doesn't say how long, but Moses has obviously grown up into... Look at Moses. Moses agreed to stay with a man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah in marriage. So we have Moses here, obviously old enough to be married. He's a full-grown man. And what we have Moses at the burning bush in chapter 3, this is where the actual calling is taking. Moses was keeping the flock with his father, and there the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame. And then Moses said, I must turn aside. But when the Lord saw that he had turned aside, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses, and he said, here I am. So right here we have God actually confronting Moses. But what we have beforehand is Moses' childhood. There's a childhood. Not very big, but it kind of talks about how it starts to begin with. And then we've got a calling. Let's see. He says, now go, I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Okay, so right there is the calling. I'm going to have you rely on your own memory at this point. If you're this far into it, you know the story well enough that it'll get so big that I need to move on. There's more to cover. But what we know now is we're going to have some cyclical pain where the plagues come, represented by the plagues repeating. That's going to be a recurring motif in Abrahamic material, old Jewish material. There's also the struggle to leave the past. The Pharaoh saying, you can go, then no, you can't. You can go, no, you can't. That represents this difficulty that we have in leaving something behind or quitting something. And, man, I've made it. Oh, I'm failing. Oh, I made it. Oh, I'm failing. It's a very difficult struggle, and that we have to turn inward. We've got to cross some threshold and go after something significant. That's what's going to emerge in Exodus. But now, after wrapping that up in a nutshell, let's go to Genesis. And I'm going to show you another story that's like this one. All right, I'm going to just move quickly through this. You can go research it if you want. I'm using, again, the NRSV for this particular video right here. It's not necessarily my favorite, but for some things I find it to be fine. Okay, what we have here in chapter 17. Abram is actually this is where Abram is being called to Abraham. But listen to what this says. When Abram was 9 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless. So what happens right there is that God just showed up and started talking to Abram. And he changes his name to Abraham. So what we understand, if we back up further, we'll go all the way back to chapter 12, where God first calls Abram. The call of Abram. This is going to be, it's not really a call, honestly, at this point. What this is the beginning. You know what? It's like a creation. It's a life cycle. The call happens at 17. This right here is, I'm going to correct it for them. I'm going to call it a life cycle. Because the human life cycle begins here. We are all Abram and Sarai. But look at what happens. Again, we have to understand that this is a human life cycle template and what there is, and that there's a hierarchy going on, that the male portion is our consciousness and the female portion is our inner self. This is like when the Lord said, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house. Therefore, a man leaves his father and his mother and clings to his wife, and they become one flesh. That's where it's recycling right there. I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you and make you a great name so that you will be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. We got cause and effect coming in. And let's see, departed from Haran, and he took his wife, and they went to the land of Canaan. And here we have, and the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring I will give this land. So he built there an altar who had appeared to him. Right here, from there he moved on to the hill country to the east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and invoked the name of the Lord. So he went east of Bethel, right as he leaves the Lord. In the same way, Cain went east of Eden as he left the Lord. We'll get to that one. Right here, though, this is where the Lord disappears in this story. Sort of. If you come through here, you will see things like, well, here's what happens next. So the Lord disappears. That's why the Lord has to reappear later. Right here, there's a point where the Lord disappears, except that along the pathway there's minor contact with the God by visions, dreams, or the angel of God or something like that, but not a physical connection with God. It's just messengers to God. If you read through from 12, when God disappears, all the way up to 17, God is going to only be appearing, or the Lord is only going to be appearing through dreams or images or messages from angels of the Lord or something like that. Okay, so you know what? We have to talk about the Lord. The Lord is a mental aspect of us. The God, there's a place where we can live from mentally that we tend not to. When we're young, before we've judged life, we live through this openness and awareness where you have deja vu and you know who's coming in the door before it opens, and you have all these little psychic hits and things like that. Those eventually shut down, but what we're seeing right there is this openness that the human has. However, we fill our mind with judgments and things that then we begin to filter through that. That higher awareness is there, but we're not mentally aware of it. What happens as life goes on, though, is we begin to live through our memories and the emotions of them. We begin to have these experiences. Now I feel this and that happened, and this happened, and oh yeah. We're no longer living through the higher self. We're beginning to live through the bundle of memories that we have. We'll bust out of them and have fun and things like that, but as time goes on, it depends on the person. We begin to live through those memories. There's a part of us that is the higher awareness, that is not the memories. It's there all along. However, we lose conscious awareness of it. We were never consciously aware of it, actually. But it comes in, and when these little dreams come, when the angel of the Lord appears or something like that, or you have an image, here's what happens when you're at night tossing and turning and you got something you can't resolve, but a third voice comes in unsolicited from outside of you. And it tries to tell you to, try to just relax, go to sleep. It's trying to, counsel you. We don't know it. That's what's out there. That's God. That's the higher awareness, or our connection to whatever that is our higher awareness. There may be something beyond the higher awareness. But if we sit from that point, when that happens, if you're feeling that turmoil, when that is happening, stop and feel it for a second. Invite it in. Don't dismiss it and get sucked back into the memories. Stop and reside with that mental perception as long as you can, and realize while you're there, you don't feel the emotional turmoil. It's only when you slip back into the memories that you feel the emotional turmoil. When you begin to see that, you understand why it's important to reconnect, reestablish this connection with the higher awareness. This is where God returns. In these stories, God disappeared. Why? We lived life and became products of our memories. Whatever we picked up, the slaves and animals and things that we picked up along the way, we became products of those, stuff we didn't want. We're going to end up having, a Sodom to destroy. We're going to have to destroy something. But what happens when God shows up is that represents that time when we go, okay, I got it. It's that time when Eckhart Tolle goes, who is this other person in here? Who is it that can't live with myself? I'm not my memories, am I? I'm something different. I need to be living from this awareness, not the memories. And when we start understanding that, observing that, paying attention to it, making the shift, consciously catching ourselves throughout the day going, oh, here I am caught up in this stuff again, constantly. The more you do that, the more you become more living in that state of disconnected from things. There may be things you have to resolve. It's not a standalone fix. If you're in the midst of something, I don't know how to put it, you can't dry off if you're standing in the rain. If you're in a bad situation, you can't heal. You have to get out of that first. So this is kind of a down the road process here. It's things from the past. If it's in the present, you have to struggle to leave the past because of the cyclical pain. You're still on the template. Anyway, what happens here is the story goes on, and this is the story of our life. But what happens that we're going to go, there's nothing to eat where we're put. What does that represent? That's in life. We're starting off as infants. We're empty. We don't have any life. We don't have any way to get life experience. So we go out and get life experience. We're going to consume. We're supposed to consume good life experience, but we're not. We're going to consume a lot of bad stuff. As we get down. So what happens here is we go to Egypt to reside as an alien, and there was a famine, was severe in the land. So when he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife, I know well that you're a woman beautiful. So where he's been put, there's a famine. So they went to reside to Egypt because of the famine. But he's afraid. He says, this is his wife, and then they'll kill me, but they'll let you live. So tell him you're my sister. And then when the Egypts saw her, that she was very beautiful, and they told Pharaoh about it. Hey, hot woman. And she's like taken into Pharaoh's house. Pharaoh marries her. They both agree. And for her sake, he dealt well with Abram. What does that mean? And because of her skills, he dealt well with Abram. He gave him sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female slaves, female donkeys and camels. So he got all that stuff for giving up his wife as his sister, and she agreed. But here, what do we have happen here? But the Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai. What do we have? Pharaoh represents life experiences. Not necessarily earlier self, but like the serpent represents experience in life that is going to be judgments. Pharaoh here is the same thing. Notice right there that plagues came as part of the cyclical thing. So God didn't actually come and intervene. There was nothing that stopped this from happening. Nothing happened. God allowed it to happen. God put them in a place where they were bound to fail, and then it happened. And what does God do as a result? Oh, I'll go ahead and send plagues. How long do plagues take? There's something not right with this story. What has happened is that because I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you, that this higher thing that we get our energy from out here is always feeding us energy through our judgments, and it's going to continue to reoccur. So that's why we get the cyclical pain, and why the plagues come, because plagues just come automatically. Plagues come as a result of what you have gathered up internally, as a result of those slaves and animals. That's why those come. So that's why God is not really there happening. The plagues are happening as a result of, now that I'm hurt and I've gathered these things up, I've got repeating issues. Damn it. This happens again and again and again. There's my plagues. Those are my plagues. We collect things as a result. These sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female slaves, female donkeys and camels, these are not things we want. We want to be empty spiritually, but the story is being made in a way that just sounds like, oh, wow, are you serious? These are all analogous things, though, that need to be interpreted in the psyche. They represent something in us. We're gathering things along the way by getting our inner selves polluted, by not paying attention, by not managing ourselves. We give up our inner selves. However, what happens in this case, Pharaoh called Abram and said, what is this you've done with me? Because the plagues came, the cyclical pain. So what happens? He sends them on. Why did you say to me, she's my sister, so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and be gone. And Pharaoh gave his men orders concerning him, and they set him on the way with his wife and all he had. Okay, this is older. What happened? There was no struggle to leave. But the past told you, time to move on. Take all of these things that you've collected. There it is, verse number 20. And Pharaoh in the past gave his men order concerning him. They sent him on the way. You just leave the past behind. Whatever it was, you and your inner self and all that you had. We're taking our life experience and moving on from the past. We didn't struggle. It's an older story. You can see that it's been in development. It's becoming more primitive the farther upstream we go. But what are we seeing right here? What you're looking at now is two stories with the Ezekiel and Joshua, where the calling just happens right there in the blue. You're just brought up. The other two shows an iteration of the individual. Here's your childhood self, and then here is your adult self or your self after the calling. When the calling happens, here's where it happens. Chapter 17 for Abraham, and chapter 3 for Moses on Mount Horeb after his childhood. So there's different things going on. You can also see they're reusing the Pharaoh motif, the Egypt motif. However, in the older one, Pharaoh seemed to be the good guy. You lied to me. Get out of here. Take your stuff and get out of here. Pharaoh was upset. And we get to Exodus. Pharaoh doesn't want them to go. In both cases, they're both representing a different style of the past. The way the story is written is less complex when it's earlier. It gets a little bit more interesting as they get older, as time goes on and they get more complicated. But we see right there's two different versions of two different stories. Two of them where it's just the calling, that would be the monomyth by itself. The other two are the monomyth, but only after the calling. 17, Mount Horeb. Completely, Campbell didn't have that entire life cycle to begin with. Now, let's move further up in Genesis and see what there was before this one. All right, in the beginning of Genesis, Adam and Eve, that is who we are. This is a human life cycle right here. There are two creation stories, but then from chapter 3, right here, on to chapter 6, is the average human life cycle if you never turn inward, if you never awaken. Awaken, that's a tough term. Do we know what that is? Let me talk about that for a second, because a lot of people have ideas about it. And it does not mean physically awakened. There's this mental or a spiritual thing. And awakening really means this. It's a point in this material. So I'm not making up my own. There's a lot of ideas out there. There's a point where you, in life, learn that you have been living through your memories, that you're a product of your memories, your experiences, and your judgments. And you go, oh, crap, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to turn inward and change those judgments in the way that I feel about things, because that's going to change the future of my life right there. That's the awakening point. When you realize I'm carrying my issues, I have to turn inward. That's what it means to awaken. I'm my issue. I have to resolve me, as within, so without. No bullshit. All right, it's not the scope of this video to cover the creation, number 1 and number 2. There are two different creation stories that are setting up a lot of things. There's cause and effect. There's a mental hierarchy. There's things that are going on that are other videos. They get too big, so right here, we're just going to jump right down here to the end where it says, man and his wife were naked and unashamed in the Garden of Eden. This, in a mental hierarchy, represents us. Adam and Eve is conscious and subconscious of each person, naked and unashamed. This is the beginning of life. We're not covered spiritually with anything yet. We have nothing. We're little kids getting ready to start. We go on to have life experiences, and that's what this is. There's a couple of trees options, right? There's there's one actually that we eat that is the knowledge of good and evil, and that represents living life. I am going from my innocent childhood now to living life and finding out that people hurt people, that there's a lot of evil, there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of, I've been hurt, I hurt people, there's something wrong. I'm going to go and lose that blissful place. I'm leaving the Garden of Eden mentally, spiritually. You hide, you're sent off on your own. What we're being told here now? Let's see. So to the woman, he said, I will greatly multiply your sorrow in your conception. So every time, what is this? This is your inner self. What happens in conception? In sorrow you shall bring forth children. What is the metaphorical idea of bringing forth children from your inner self? That's the manifestation of, well, the offspring of the seeds of the experiences, of the judgments, of whatever our life experiences, and their desire to be to your husband, and he shall rule over you. There's a mental hierarchy right there. The inner self is always going to be a product of the conscious decisions and the way we feel about We have an experience, we judge that experience. We're going to store that experience. And when we do, we're going to have the memory of it, as well as when we draw it up, the emotional state of it is going to be there too. But all of that comes from the physical experience, and it gets stored into the inner self. Yeah, the consciousness rules over the inner self, but we don't know it. We're making decisions and going, I hate that, I hate you, you're a piece of crap, I'm a piece of crap, all of those things, and we live into that, not knowing it. And then to Adam, because you've hearkened to the voice of your wife, you've eaten of the tree which I have commanded you, you shall not eat of it, cursed is the ground, and in sorrow you shall eat of it all the day of your life. This is letting us know we're going to be living unaware. We're going to be cursed of the ground. We're going to be living off of the physical experiences. Instead of living elevated above it and observing it from a higher self, we're going to be right in the middle of it. We're going to be cursed as the ground, and also thorns and thistles it shall bring forth to you. We're going to have these continual issues. Damn you! Shut up! I'll fix the hole in the drywall. That one too. Leave me alone. I don't know. I'm drawing from my own past. There's some interesting things in here I'm going to let go for now. Okay, so we go on, and then what happens is there's a division. This is a sequence of us moving along. We go from Adam and Eve into what? We are no longer our infant self. We now develop into a conscious self that is divided. Cain and Abel. One rules over the other. This is where the presence of the Lord leaves. And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. So where is this in our life? This is a time in our life where we've become divided, left our early self behind, have collected a lot of issues along the way. We're no longer happy. And if the Lord was there, we'd be living through the higher self, not through the memories. That's why the Lord is gone. Seriously, we're no longer living through the detached higher self. The Lord is still there all the time, but we let that go, and we begin learning about life, and we face the memories, and we begin living through the memories and accumulating more and experiencing life through those until, and hopefully, we get to a point where we go, okay, this is the natural course for me. Now I'm going to stop and elevate above it. Now there's some other things that go on here that I am going to say this represents a time in our life where time goes on and we have life experiences. These are iterations of us. The Enoch, there's something else going on there, but part of a story network, it gets too thick. Well, I'll leave that one. Enoch, Lamech, Adah, these are iterations of us. We dwell in tents and have cattle. We're going off in life and getting jobs, working at McDonald's and going in the military and doing stuff like that. His brother's name was Jabal. These are all playing out inside of us. They are parts of us, aspects of us. The handle, the harp, and the organ, where there are different aspects of us that are growing and developing. And Zillah was also bare Tubal-Cain, the instructor of every artificer in brass and iron, and the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. Okay, so we're learning about life. This is a strange one. They've only got brass and iron here. If we went to Enoch, we would see all kinds of things like spells and incantations and makeup and all kinds of different things like that. We go on and live a life trying to fit in and become physical specimens without understanding that we're supposed to be spiritual beings instead of, so that goes on. This is a time in our life where we're living life experiences and time goes by. Then what happens down here is that we've got, was added in later. This is plugged in. And I'll tell you what, if you take this 5, number 1, all the way out to 32 down here, maybe 31 or 32. If you took that out completely, you wouldn't even miss it. What would happen is this. It would read like this. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, and called his name Seth. For God said, she hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. And to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. And then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. Jumping down to 6. And then it came to pass when men began to multiply in the face of the earth, and the daughters were born unto them. There's not a miss. This is a very complex thing that's added in. It's added into a place though that it fits. It means time goes by. These can be said as iterations of us. You become Adam, then you become Seth. And this, if you think about it, it's the things in your life. When I was a freshman in high school, I was this kind of a person. When I was a sophomore, I was a different person. As time goes by and we keep going through iterations of life experiences, we become something different. I'm not the 12-year-old Danny Paulson that got caught stealing a bag of cookies or trying to steal a bag of cookies in a grocery store when I was 12 years old. These are different iterations of us, if you can think of it that way. Now, what they're doing here, though, is they're creating numbers as a part of a code. If you would recognize, for example, like we're looking for a 3-7 code, 900 said seven times, 800's repeated 7 times, but we're looking for the numbers that appear with it: 30, 7, 12, 15, 5, 40, 10, 35. There's other numbers that are the ones that we're going to be guided to. Okay, let's skip that. That drops off of, that was added in later. That was not originally part of it. That is part of a growth and a development system in this. It doesn't fit verbally or anything else, and it creates a code pattern. Okay. What happens, though, is when men begin to multiply in the face of the earth and daughters were born to them. This really is us, that we are growing and developing different aspects of us. And that what we have, the daughters of men were fair. What are the daughters of men? These are, if we are all fitting into this the same way, then we are all men. The consciousness is the men. The inner self is the wife. So the daughters are the offspring of the male and the female, which is what in this case, it's going to be all of our qualities and characteristics, our love, joy, peace, sense of wonder, different things. These are our beautiful daughters. They were fair, they were pure, and they took wives if they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is flesh, also his day shall be 120 years. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into and unto the daughters of men and bare children to them. Okay, so what we're seeing here is a metaphorical representation of our life. The giants in the earth in those days. The earth is my life experience, your life experience. What's your earth? What are the giants? Those are the things that take over us. Those are the demons that possess us. They were the giants in those days on the earth. It's the same concept. And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children unto them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. So all of those childhood pure qualities and characteristics have now become, I don't trust you, I hate you, get away from me. We're no longer the same. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping things, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. Okay, what I'm going to do is stop right there and say, right up here, when Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden, the Lord was no longer present until down here. So the Lord is appearing and is calling Noah. So this is a very old style. There's still iterations of us. Noah is a further iteration of Adam and Eve. It's a part of us. It's a called person, but it doesn't look the same. Well, we have to know it's doing the same. And then what happens? We have a purification. The flood takes place, and okay, so that is what is that? When Noah is called, that is when the monomyth begins right there. So everything from chapter 1 and 2 is creation, and then from 3 all the way up to 6 is a life cycle of a human. How you start out, how you're going to have cyclical pain, the pain in childbirth. You see that there's metaphorical representations that are analogous in there. You got bats in your belfry. You got demons in your head. You've got weeds from your garden. You've got it's painful to continue to have offspring. We're getting triggered all the time. All of these are very difficult to see, but if you understand that they're always built on one mental psychological template, you begin to realize, okay, that's how they're doing it. I need a cyclical pain in here. How am I going to find it? Oh, there's the pain in childbirth all the time. There it is. Bingo. How often? Cyclically, I said. Every time. That's cyclical. You imply it. Every time this acts out, it's going to be hurtful, and it increases. It gets worse every time. Yeah, I used to kind of be confused about it. Now, it gets really out of control. And it gets to the point to where all of those beautiful qualities have been disrupted. Yeah, all that. Okay, so we see right there is that human life cycle. God disappeared and then reappears. So that right there is a template that wasn't in the Ezekiel and Joshua, but we saw it in the Exodus with Moses. Actually, we also saw it with Abram and Abraham. Each of those are like, well, Abraham starts, Noah starts, Ezekiel and Joshua. All of those are the start of a monomyth. However, again, these both of the last two, the Abram to Abraham and the Adam and Eve to Noah, are human life cycle templates that are not identified by Joseph Campbell at all. Not at all. Neither was the creation. Every mythology or religion has a creation in the beginning, but it never repeats. So that's the rarest of all the templates. But if you interpret them, you will see that they also are the same thing. Each creation is the creation of a human, put in their own verbiage. All right, now I want to find one more here. We're going to go and take a look at the origin, and that is the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, also known as the 7 tablets of creation. That came on 7. It was found archaeologically on 7 clay tablets. And so as we go through here, what we're going to see, if you're not familiar with it, is we've got a creation. Apsu is the creator god here, and Tiamat is going to represent kind of earth. It's not exactly the same as Adam and Eve sort of a thing. It's an older style, but it didn't quite. They weren't even trying to make it into a monotheism at this point. In Genesis, you can see from chapter 1 through 11, there's hints that it's still a polytheism. From 12 on, it is not. It's absolutely monotheism. Here, no question about it. They're talking about gods instead of God, single God, who has sons that come down and violate the daughters of men anyway. That's not a... What's a monotheism? What the hell does one God mean? There's only one God. He's just got a bunch of family that goes around and does a bunch of stuff all the time. That's different than a bunch of gods, isn't it? I don't think so. Okay. It's not. All right. It was then that the first being Apsu, who was their source, and the progenitor Tiamat, the mother who gave birth to all, intermingled their waters, producing neither field nor marsh, at a time when no divine beings had yet come into existence. There were no names to be spoken, and no fates pronounced. Right here we are already born, but we have not yet developed. There were no names to be spoken, and no fates pronounced. This is not going to become a devil god sort of a thing. There's going to be a good and an evil, but it's in a different way. Okay, so no names to be spoken and no fates pronounced. What is a name to be spoken? I have made a decision. I hate this. And no fate pronounced. So there's no result. There's nothing. There's no cause and effect in effect yet. There's no cause and effect in place. This is too early on. But the gods were given birth within those intermixing waves. The first were Lamu and Lahamu. Their names were spoken. That represents our early born self. Lamu and Lahamu is like Daniel and Danielle. If you were looking at my name, it's a male and a female version of the same thing. So that would be like an Adam and an Eve right there. But once they had fully grown and become mature of form, then they were born Anshar and Kishar. Then were born Anshar and Kishar. This is an iteration. This is time going by. And so many days passed by and many years were counted. Now, on the other one, we had a lineage in there. Here, it's much simpler. Many days passed by and many years were counted. The first one was Anu, being as great as any of his forebears. This is us turning into the selves that we don't want to be. Tiamat is going to become full of things, but Tiamat is going to be really represented as the inner being that's being controlled by these, it sounds like these other gods that are about. And that would be, if you were reading the Bible, that would be, to treat these as the sons of God. More infused with might than even his grandfather Anshar, with whom were the gods. Okay, let's just get on to where we go. The generation of gods would gather together for wild revels. So imagine this is in the mind. The generation of gods, this is our beliefs, the wild revels. So they proved bothersome to Tiamat. That's our inner self. Their hullabaloo echoed. All this commotion proved unsettling to Tiamat's inner being. How do you feel? And she was bothered by all of their activity within Andaruna. Andaruna is the meeting place of the gods. That's the mind. There was nothing Apsu could do to mitigate their carousing. That's the higher awareness. At this point in time, the higher awareness is not able to stop things. There was nothing Tiamat would say to quiet them down, and no matter how troublesome their conduct became to her, regardless of how rowdy things were, she just put up with it. Okay, let's move on here. This represents our inner selves and our inner, that would be like the daughters of men. You know what? These would be these would be like the giants, the gods, the giants that came about as a result of the having offspring with the beautiful daughters of men. Similar thing. We've got this out of control gods or out of control giants. I've been troubled by the manner of their conduct so that I could not relax during the day nor sleep well at night. Does that one ring true? Do you wake up at 3, 4 in the morning going, I can't resolve it, tossing, turning, fitful? Therefore I shall bring it to a halt and get rid of them all. Then silence shall reign, and thus we might get some sleep. Then Tiamat happens. Well, so what happens here is there's this conflict that goes on. Later on, what happens is within the unsullied waters of the Apsu was Marduk born. Now, actually up here, let me go look and see Apsu. Apsu is the creator god, remember? Right here. For when he chanted it, he calmed the turbulent waters. Okay, so we've got something going on here that Apsu, for abounding sleep, overcame Apsu. This is the creator god. Bounding sleep overcame Apsu, and he became pacified. This is the higher awareness, and caused him to enter a deep sleep, steeped in tranquility, while his officer Mumu, the advisor, was left in a trance. This is our higher awareness and the self that we should be in charge that we've been left out. And he took the mantle of brilliance and dressed himself in it. Then he forced Apsu down under his feet and crushed him. Then he established his own residence on top of the Apsu. So we don't have God disappearing. What we have here is the creator God being totally just taken over. You're not there, you're hidden away, something. So that's good. So we see that happening here, but it's in a different style. Apsu, the creator God, does get taken out. And within the unsullied waters of the Apsu, Apsu is still a creative place. Like the Tao. The everything, the all. And unsullied within the pure part of the inner self was Marduk born. That is where the hero is born. Let's see. I'm not sure what else to go on to with that one. Okay, so what we had right there is, first of all, in the Enuma Elish, which is the very oldest one, what we see is this transition. It's not a monotheism yet. It's a polytheism, and they don't make any bones about it. They're not trying to create that as, if you read it, they're not trying to honestly claim that that is how life comes about in the same way that Genesis creation does. It is metaphorical, and it's meant to guide people. However, it's built on the template of a human life cycle, and they're not sequencing it in the same way that is so obvious that we see later on. Later on, when I say later on, we're talking maybe still 4,000, 5,000 years ago. So later on from Babylonian, what was hundreds of years at least. I want to show you something else. If we take a look at something here, this is something that's kind of rare to see. If I go in here to the Babylonian creation myth, the Enuma Elish, and Marduk is the called hero, I'm going to search his name. Marduk's name appears exactly 41 times throughout the Enuma Elish. All right, now if I go to Genesis in the King James Version, I'm going to come up here and take a look at Noah, who is the called hero. 41 times. That may not seem like much. That needs to be the subject of another video. Okay, so I started recent and kind of went back, but showed variations there. First of all, the first two, the oldest ones, the Babylonian creation myth and Genesis. It starts out with two people, and you really can't see that it's a flow along the way, but there's a called hero eventually that emerges from someplace. It seems to come out of the blue. So that's the sequence it's following. Then when we get down into the second time that happens in Genesis is when the Abram and Abraham happens. Only in that time, that time, it's very clear that it's an iteration of the same person. So you put yourself into the story and go, okay, that's me early on, and this is me after I've awakened. And then when you get to Exodus, same thing. The calling is happening right there. I see the calling. God shows up, take your shoes off, crosses the threshold, the first threshold. I don't want to go. I don't speak right. The denial of the call, getting the staff, the supernatural aid, all of that, all the component parts are there. Then the cyclical pain, the plagues that happen, the struggle to leave. You can go, no, I'm going to come and get you and stop you after all. And then getting through the Red Sea with God's help. All of those component parts are they're there in so many places if you know how to spot what they are, if you understand that they're conceptual. Also realizing that in those first ones, you see where the Lord or God literally leaves and returns. You see it in that type of story. God disappears. Now, then in the later two stories, the Ezekiel and the Joshua, they're just two examples of many more. In those cases, that entire first life is gone. The sequence starts right when the calling happens. So God shows up and calls a person right there. The first part of the story and how it comes about is not even there. Okay, that's it for this video. I realize this is more advanced. It really gets into you have to kind of have a handle on what the template is. And I understand the difficulty of it. I have talked with people who have gone to school and have degrees in, mythological studies. And, you mention myth, template, monomyth, and they won't even talk to you anymore. They glaze over, start out very nice and polite. So they're not mean to you. They just suddenly disappear like, uh-oh, not that nut again. So, you know what? It's there, but it's so hard to see that it's just, I don't even know what to do. It takes a lot of work to get there and to understand that you can't read these without interpreting them in the mind. That clashing rocks, that Red Sea, the river Styx, the river Chebar, all of them represent the same thing, a river crossing. You have to look and say, you know what, everybody is starting off with some sort of a crossing because of something that happens here or there, and they're on the path to rectify this or that or something. All of the stories follow the same pattern. They're just very old, and I think, I don't know, people today don't understand and they don't comprehend very well. The stories don't make sense. If you listen to them, they just fall apart. You really have to examine them. I think what happens is some people do examine them, they become atheists, the ones that are kind of militant atheists that are just so angry about the stuff now that they're unreasonable as well. There's something that is in here. I still go to atheist channels and try to talk to them, and they just say religion bad. It's like, well, you know what? Religion's a broad umbrella. Abrahamic religion is not the same in any way, shape, or form as Buddhism or Taoism. You cannot just say religion. Anyway, yeah, the world's in bad shape because of Abraham. Abraham, that's it. Because of evolution, over-evolution. And how do resets happen? Logically? Comments, questions? I'd love to hear from you. Take care.